Hey everyone, welcome to the Nightmare Hour podcast. And this week, I'm just going to tell you what we're going to do instead of this clever stuff we always try to do. Adam and I going back and forth trying to figure out how to start this thing. I'm just going to say we're going to talk about Slumber Party Massacre today, and maybe a little bit about that whole wholesome like genre of the slasher and what this means in there and how it fits in, and maybe even talk about slumber parties. I don't know. We'll see where this goes. As always, I'm Eric. That's Adam. Hello,
Hello.
Adam.
I hope we talk about summer parties. That's the only reason I picked this movie because I thought it was going to be a fun sleepover. My
Yeah,
camera is crazy. You didn't even tell me how crazy my. You see this new Coors Light werewolf by me? That's
yeah,
pretty
I
fun.
do. Except for the people that are listening right now don't, but I
Okay,
do.
well,
Yes.
directly behind me is this. What would you call this?
It looks like a dog that just mauled and
Well,
destroyed something with its
it's a
teeth.
beer
That's
wolf.
okay. I can't see that from here. It's a Coors
Uh,
Light hat on a dog
yeah, it's a
that is very
wolf.
happy about something, and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah. So I got that. It's right behind me. It's the only decor in my entire office. It's what I've been waiting for my entire life. I did not know it even existed. But yeah, we're gonna talk about Slumber Party Massacre, a movie that I hadn't seen. Okay, so it's a movie that I will say, like in quotations, I hadn't seen, but I think I had started it a lot, and I had like passively watched this movie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Have you? Oh, I forgot. You're not in a black void anymore. Look at you. You're in a. You
I
moved
know
out
I'm
of
in
the
a room.
closet.
I
You're in a
did.
real room.
I decided I needed like actual sunlight. There's like a window right here. You can see like
Can't believe I
light.
didn't notice that. Yeah. No, your
You can
background
see me
looks
out. Yeah. Like
considerable.
look at me. I've got a glow. It's a sun glow.
You're wearing a yellow shirt.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't remember. I didn't see this when I was young. I know it was one that I filled in a little later, but it was still quite a while ago. I just rewatched last night, so I'm fresh. But before that, I think it was over 10 years ago I saw that. I think I have a vague memory of it being one of the films I watched on this new service called Netflix that sent you 3 discs at a time back in those days when you get those Netflix envelopes. I think it was one of those movies. I
Um,
remember correctly.
so I would guess that I watched at least a part of this in like the 90s at some point. It's like it's the title that like we all I think everybody knows whether you've seen it or not. You know the title of the Slumber Party Massacre in the same way you know Friday the 13th and Halloween are horror
Mhm.
films, right?
I think so. Like if you're a horror fan, at least.
I think even not horror fan. I think it's just like because it's kind of a silly title, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't really have anything like I mean we'll get into it, but watching it today or last night, I loved it, and so spoiler, I liked it a lot, but I don't think it has like that iconic non-horror thing like the Freddy Krueger's, Jason, Michael Myers. It doesn't have like the zeitgeist behind it. So like if you're not a horror fan at all, this might be something you've never heard of.
It was originally titled Sleepless Nights.
That sounds like it should have Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in it.
Ooh, it does. Sleepless Nights with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. But it's also it's also like that sounds like a pretty sexy title. Like
It
that's a
does.
USA up all night kind of title.
It is, and it's like incorrect because this all happens over one night. There's no nights in this.
Yeah, it'd be Sleepless Night. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also
So
spelled with a K. Even more confusing.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was originally wrote to be a parody of teen slash slasher movies, which is interesting because
That's
it's
yeah.
1982.
And you already beat me to my point is because like I never got this watching it before, but watching it last night, like it feels like I am pretty confident now that this was intended as a complete satire of the slasher genre. Like they are pointing out like the sexism, the machismo, the like ridiculousness of slashers, like directed by Amy Holden Jones and written by Rita Mae Brown. And I think they're coming at it from a pretty feminist place in a very like satirical, pointed way. And I didn't ever really pick that up until last night. Like to me, when I first watched it, I'm like, this is like the most nudity and like horny movie I've ever seen in my life. I didn't get the vaguity, the what they were going for there. Like I was,
Well, a couple things that leading up to the creation of this movie. So this was a New World Picture, so this was a Corman movie. So Corman was probably, doing his Corman thing, which was what's hot right now and how do I make my version of it for really cheap. The movie was made for $220,000. It was written by author and known at the time a very big feminist activist, Rita Mae Brown. It was titled originally Sleepless Nights, and it was a parody of slasher movies. And then they kind of repurposed it a little bit to make it a little more serious, to be a little bit more in the Friday the 13th realm of things. And then Amy Holden Jones, who was a film editor at the time, she had asked one of the producers if she could direct it, or if she could direct a film for New World, and gave her a bunch of scripts. And then she wanted to do that script, which was had a different title, a second title called Don't Open the Door. And so what she did is she filmed the first 3 scenes with her husband and the cinematographer for like $1,000 in her house around LA. And then they took that, they edited it together, and then they showed Corman. Corman said, okay, yeah, you can direct this. And then at the time, she had also got hired to be the editor on what would have been, probably at the time, one of her biggest jobs, which was editing Steven Spielberg's E.T., which she had to drop out of.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so there's a lot of backbone there because it's pretty, I think, incredible. But I mean, you look at her as an editor. She did Hollywood Boulevard. That was her first solo editing job. She did Corvette Summer, and then she did a couple other like small like movies I've never heard of. Like I've never heard of American Boy or Secondhand Hearts. And then she directs. And in 6 years, she goes from an editor of Hollywood Boulevard to Slumber Party Massacre. And then her career gets, I think, pretty fascinating. We can talk about it a little bit after this, I think, because she kind of goes in and out of genre, but does a lot more writing than directing, which is kind of a bummer because I think one of the charms about this film is her directing.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, and I feel silly, I guess. Just when you grow up in the 80s and somewhat the 90s, you just kind of grow up with so much of that like casual sexism and like sexual assaulty stuff that it didn't really hit as hard as it does now, where we're looking back, where things have, we've been all educated a little bit more and listened to more voices now. So now when we watch it, it's pretty obvious what they're going for. But I think in the lens of like the John Hughes and, that the Monster Squad world, like this was pretty easy to be just taken at face value for what it was and not really thinking about what's really being said here. So I'm glad to revisit it.
Yeah. Well, and then just to dig in a little deeper. So Amy Jones is married to, until last year when he passed away, was married to Michael Chapman, who is an insanely accredited cinematographer. I mean, he had worked with everybody. I mean, his first movie was a Hal Ashby film, but he worked with Philip Kaufman. He did The Last Waltz and Taxi Driver. He did, a number of Philip Kaufman movies. He did Body Snatchers from '78. He did Raging Bull, Lost Boys. I mean, this guy, he was Ghostbusters, I think 2 for sure, not as good as 1. But he had quite the career working with a ton of huge filmmakers, and I think that might kind of mirror like their filmmaking relationship. But it certainly was how I think his eye, because he helped shoot those scenes, helps her get the movie off the ground and really launched her career from an editor that not many people were aware of to this film, which is just fascinating. I think that she launches her producing and directing career with this movie, Restless Nights. So it's 1982 when they decide to make this, or that's when it's released. So they're shooting in 81. But here's the films, slasher movies in that 2-year period that have come out. So in my head, it was 82. I was like, oh, they shot this 81. Halloween was just a couple of years before, 1980 and 81 was Friday the 13th 1 and 2. But like the slasher craze hadn't really taken off. I was fucking wrong. I was really fucking wrong, Eric. So we have, these are just movies from, I think, 80 or 81. So predating this movie, you have Happy Birthday to Me, The Prowler, My Bloody Valentine, Prom Night, Terror Train, The Burning, Just Before Dawn, Night School, Final Exam, Nightmare, X-Ray, Graduation Day, Funhouse, Hell Night, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, Madman, Maniac, New Year's Evil, Bloody Birthday, and the list goes on. Those are just the ones that I was aware of. And then, of course, Friday 13th, 1 and 2, Halloween 1 and 2. So you had a lot more than I thought. So I guess this, having been like poised to be a parody of those films, makes sense. Oh, and of course in 1979 you have driller killer, which is going to be important as to how this movie takes the killer. But fuck, I was wrong really bad, because like when I read parody, I was like, how is this a parody? This was like the first 7 years of slasher movies, but really like the first 3. But I guess 1980 and 81, that was the year.
That's of the kind of what, like, I mean, I didn't realize how all those came out, but looking, that makes sense, because what we learned, like Halloween was one of the first, and that was like the Halloween based one, and the date based ones, which Friday the 13th kind of borrowed from, and then all the others, some of the others you mentioned from, and it just kind of, you can see that happening in the industry, because Halloween was like a phenomenon, and just going from there and trying to like capture that same that same format and trying to make it profitable. I can see that, because we get that now. Like, remember what happened after Blair Witch, like how many found footage movies came out within like a year or two after. Like when Hollywood or when movie makers see something that's profitable, they grab it fast. Like, so it makes sense looking back that was the case, but I didn't realize there were that many before between those and this one.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, but I guess you're right that we know we've talked about before, like Texas Chainsaw and all those ones that predate Halloween, even if only by a few years. There was certainly bricks being laid. Well, and
Peeping Tom, right? That was like one of the first,
And I think probably, I guess these converge when like the teen slashers really created, I guess you could say from Halloween, but in that time period, you're seeing the explosion of the teen movie, the popular teen movie of all sorts, you know, from like Last Picture Show to Grease to, you know, I think obviously you don't get Fast Times till later and John Hughes films till later, but probably from like 74 till like 90, the amount of movies that are made that are starring teens and are like teen specific comedy or dramas is, you know, outweighs probably most any other genre.
I think so. And like kind of getting back to this movie, like the reaction to it, I think the slasher also really missed, like Halloween is a great film. I think I'll stand up as like one of those movies that we all talk about in cinematic history. Texas Chainsaw too, and others that I'm sure I'm forgetting. But those, like the archetype, the bones of those movies were mishandled and misused in this exploitive way after that, like the hulking person after these girls that they used as like an excuse to show as much boobs and butts and everything else that they could just to get people in the seats, like very exploitation film kind of stuff. And that kind of became what the slasher still to this day is kind of known for. Like, I think people expect to see boobs when you go see a slasher movie. Like there's a whole, like expectation, and there's a whole like group of horror people that love that. They need boobs in a movie. So I think it kind of followed that and got made into this money-making machine that exploited like the feminine form and like femininity as being like the chaste victim and all this stuff. And so I think this movie is really important of kind of like not only like satirically taking that on, but kind of shifting it to like empowering women a little bit in those movies, like in even like the cheap knockoff ones, because you know they copy what's successful.
Well, and I think I always thought this was a cheap knockoff one, and it kind of walks the line of like being a cheap knockoff one, and then doing something either like really innovative or really clever, but then it kind of falls back into a cheap knockoff. So it is kind of going back and forth, but I think it's really held together by the style of it, because it is very stylistic.
It is. Yeah, and I think that knockoff stuff is different than the other ones because it's very intentional. Like they're pointing pretty like consciously towards other things we've seen and kind of really accentuating how sexual and like sexist and misogynistic some of it is. So like it was great. I mean, it is definitely one of those like 80s movies that was made for super cheap, and there's not a lot like narratively holding it together, but like you're saying, like the direction and the things they show and the satirical elements of it really holds this thing together. And it's pretty, I don't know if powerful is too strong of a word, but it's pretty well done for what it's saying, like when you watch it now.
Yeah, well, and it does it very briskly in like 75 minutes. Like it is a very tight movie that doesn't waste any time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's really no, I mean, not that any of these other films we've been mentioning have tons of plot, but there's really like, it is just, hey, we're going to have a slumber party tonight. And then the killer's there. There's no like narrative like arcs or anything. It's just very loosely tied together through a very loose story.
I mean, there's like a little bit of like the popular kids, and then like one that's not quite in like fully fitting in. But I mean, you get that in like 2 lines of dialogue, and that's and like one scene where like somebody overhears something. But at the end of the day, she's still invited to the slumber party.
Yeah.
I mean, like they may be poking, making fun of her, but she's still gumming, and she still goes.
No, she doesn't go. She stays with her little sister. Well, she goes.
She goes. She shows up.
Yeah, she does.
She gets to the house.
Yeah, but that, I think, she's that's that trope of like the final like good girl that shows up at the end to see everything that has gone crazy.
Valerie.
Yeah.
So
I absolutely, not to get too far ahead, but like I absolutely love the scenes with her and her little sister, by the way. Like just those dialogue scenes that really have nothing to do with the rest of the plot, but just like what they say and how they interact and all that, I think are fantastic. So we can get there later, but
I mean, we're there now. There's only a couple. There's only a couple scenes with them two.
Well, it's just very like, I think it's like where we kind of step out of the satire, because it is like it's women, 2 girls looking at like porno mags and talking about like their sexuality and stuff, and that really wasn't. I don't know. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of movies we didn't even know came out at that time, so I could be totally wrong here. But it seems like at the time, especially in these slashers, that's kind of a foreign concept, like the female like holding their own sexuality. And I think there's a lot of this film where they do, like they empower it and embrace it, and it's there, like it belongs to them. It's their own like nudity, their sexuality is like for them, and I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, I think well, I mean, there's only a few male characters outside of the killer. What is the killer's name? I can't remember. It's
doesn't matter.
Russ or Ross or something. Outside of him, there's only a couple other male characters that really even have. I mean, they're like physically in the movie, but they don't say or do a lot. They're pretty worthless.
Yeah,
but it is definitely a movie.
And that's worth pointing out too. Is like they're super creepy and like they ogle and they stare and they make jokes, but they have no power in this movie. They're just like these flaccid characters in this side that are really weak. Like they don't really play into the movie at all.
Well, they get killed off pretty early. Like most of the male characters are dead pretty quickly.
Yeah. And all the male characters are gross. Like there's no like normal like male character who's just like, hey, what's up? With the exception of maybe the neighbor, but everything that portrays him is like this red herring of him being like the creepy older neighbor.
Oh, Mr. David, the neighbor.
Yeah.
Who's his whole job is to check on the girls during this slumber party while the parents are leaving. I don't know why the parents are leaving. They're just like in a hurry. They're like, all right, no parties. And Mr. David, our neighbor, is going to take care of you. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah, everything.
It's all set up for him to be the ultimate peeping Tom.
Yeah, it's like it portrays him as like every like stereotype of the creepy old neighbor leering at the high school girls that live next door, but nothing ever comes to fruition. It's basically he's used for that fake scare and for like the fake perv. Like he's doing things where you're like, oh god, he's being creepy, and then there's always like an innocent explanation for it, and he walks off like doop doop doo.
Yep. Well, and he gets knocked off pretty quick too. Like presumably. Yeah. He wouldn't have let any of the shenanigans go on with those boys. Like the 2 boys that come over, he would have said, no, I said I was going to look after you for your parents, and I'm here to do that. Get out of here, boys. But instead, he gets killed like pretty much the same time those 2 boys showed up.
Yeah, I think the boys actually hear him getting killed without knowing what it is while he's out hunting snails, which is the most ridiculous thing ever.
I think that was something people did in 1981. I think that they were often hunting snails at night
with a meat cleaver, just cause.
I mean, what else are you gonna use?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's fair. Like, yeah, the movie starts with those. I think those same 2 high school boys just like staring at this poor woman who's just a telephone worker trying to install things and doing her job, and they're just staring at her butt and like harassing her, and it goes from there. And the whole movie kind of has that scene. And I think by extension, the camera does. That's what I really got this time, that I really loved, is that it made me realize how satirical this really is how the camera just stares at nudity and like dwells on it and just is really creepy about it. From the opening scenes where the girl's getting ready and she just takes her clothes off for no reason and it stays on it for a really long time, to that really extended shower scene where I laughed so hard because they're all talking, and whoever's talking, the camera goes up just for a second to see their face, and then it just goes right back down and just looks at their ass the entire time. And it goes from like, I think 2 to 3 girls doing that. Like,
yeah, it does.
It looks up at them just for a second.
You're missing something, because in that scene in particular, something else is happening. Yes, they're talking and it's kind of following them, but it's also tracking a bar of soap that they're all sharing. which I can't it's always like the funny scene in like 70s 80s movies when like there's a lot of shower scenes in those movies, but often thing that they do is they share a bar of soap at some point. So for who knows how long that they're like, I'm washing my, it'd be like if right now I was like, oh, you've been staying in this water this whole time, here's the bar of soap, Eric, and I handed you the bar of soap. But they're in the shower. They're just not doing anything but getting wet until I'm fully done with the bar of soap, the one soap we have. But there is the shower scene. I think I've made it many times to the shower scene, but I always, I think that's where it kind of lost me every time. I was like, oh, this movie is just an exploitive like piece of cinema. And that's like really the sequence that really feels the most like it. But it's done so much so that it's like, it has to be done. Like, we're gonna do this so much that like it is ridiculous. And that like 5-minute sequence in the showers, there's the most nudity I've ever seen in a movie that's not really sexual, that is explicitly them cleaning themselves.
And it's just very it's very intentional, because it like it looks away like every camera does, but then it's like, nope, we're going right back down to it. And there's people talking and it's just butt shots, and everyone played basketball in that with no bra or anything on. They're just like this like t-shirts and the shortest shorts, and it just dwells on it. It felt very like I could like you, like when I watched it in the different scope, I'm like, this is a little bit much. like I didn't really understand the satire part of it, but this time it's just like, oh, like they're making a point of what like all these other movies are doing needlessly. And they're just like, you want to see butts and boobs? Well,
here's your butts and boobs. Here's the quota in this 5-minute sequence. And it is so I guess because I never made it through that sequence. I don't remember it much happening after that. But now that I did, and I watched the whole movie, I'm like, oh, that is actually maybe one of the most like most obvious scenes of parody, I think, in the film, because of what you said, like the expectation for boobs and butts and stuff, and it actually gives us more butts than boobs. I think we get a lot of butts in that scene, a lot of up and down our butts. Anyways, so we get this long shower sequence, and that's when we get, I mean, really, this is all the character development we're gonna get is like the new girl Valerie, who is very good at basketball. We're shown that in the scene before when they all worked up quite the sweat. And then her Trish, who's like kind of the leader of the gang, the girls that are having the slumber party. I mean, that's pretty much all we get. They gently make fun of, I think, Valerie. I think it's not even that bad, I don't think, but it's enough that like bums her out. But she and she says she's not going to go to the party. She has other things to do.
Well, and the mocking is always just like it's very nice. Like, if I heard people mocking me that way, I'd be like, okay, because they're like, how is she so good at basketball? What's her deal? And why is she so pretty? Like, it's like very nice
compliments. They're not very
nice,
mean.
Insulting.
And then they leave. But she declines the invite to the summer party. I think she says that she's got to hang out with her sister or something, right? And then one of her friends is like, oh shoot, I forgot my book. And like at this point, I guess we're led to believe that nobody is in the school any longer. Now that they've showered and that they've left, everyone has abandoned the school. And she goes back in to get her book. And then she runs into Russ, the driller killer.
Is that his name? Russ the Killer?
Yeah, Russ is his name.
Yeah. And
And
he's
then,
the every stereotype of like the killer from years ago that has escaped from wherever he is, the asylum or whatever. So very
yep.
like Michael Myers-esque nod.
Although he kind of he has more, it's played more like, he's very creepy, I would say. He's played very like raw and creepy, more
Yeah,
like
like
Maniac, I think, than it is like,
yeah, like he's a real person, I think. Like he's not
yeah.
this hulking shape of a killer. Like he's just a guy that's either on drugs or has never slept in his life because his eyes are just red as like on like his makeup. Like he's an insomniac, I think. But he
Yeah,
does
and
seem very like real.
yeah, he seems very tangible, and I think, and he could, you know, I don't think he doesn't feel scary to us, but like he feels like an actual maniac. And then the little nuance, I guess, to why he's
Mhm.
doing this, we get later on, which we will talk about, is actually where you're like, oh, this movie is intentionally pretty smart. And a good look from the female
Yeah,
perspective of the slasher film, because of the few lines of dialogue he gets and how that like affects
yeah,
what he's doing. But
that's amazing.
he kills, well, there's a pretty long sequence in the high school where he's chasing Linda, and Linda's hiding, and it's very silly. It's like the action beats are pretty funny in that, because she gets cut and she's bleeding, and it's one of those things where like there's no blood dripping to where she hides, but like instead like there's a pool of blood that's running out from underneath the door that he's standing right in front of, and that's how he finds and catches her. It's a very
Yeah,
funny moment, and again, like I'm not sure if it's intentionally written to be funny or if it's just like we have such a tight schedule, and you know we can't do that elaborate of a you know hide and go seek type of scene, so it's just gotta be like you get one scene and then she hides, and then the silliest way of being
yeah.
caught,
I
because we actually don't
also
see her die.
yeah, it's just like that shot of him with his drill
Opens and
thing,
yeah,
his
opening the
big
door.
giant, big giant phallic drill. That's his weapon of choice. Like he's
Yeah.
drilling these girls, which
Which
is, you
wait,
know,
he
pretty
gets
subtle.
that, yeah, he gets that drill from the telephone repair woman
Yeah,
who he kills first, which I'm like, why does she have such a huge drill? I mean, she's got like a 24-inch bit on this drill for fuck, I don't know why, but she
yeah,
does.
yeah.
Yeah, but now
I
he's got this huge tool.
I also know he does have a huge tool, but I also noticed like the compensation thing is kind of at play here because he's relatively a small man. Like he can't be like more
Yeah.
than like 5'6", 5'8", somewhere in there. Like he doesn't look like Michael Myers looks or Jason looks or these other killers that are big and massive. Like he's a tiny man who seems to be overcompensating with his giant tool, and I think that's probably intentional.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it has to be intentional, right? I mean, why else would you give him this very, unless you're just like a super fan of Driller Killer and you're like, I can do it better.
Yeah,
But I do love his drill that's cordless and seems to have like an endlessly long battery on it. Like he takes this thing everywhere. He goes up and down stairs. He never has to plug this fucking thing in. I don't even know if they had rechargeable battery drills at this time.
I don't know, and it seems to be like ridiculously sharp because he's not just drilling things; he's like slicing things with it too. Like people's throats getting sliced by it and stuff. It's a very versatile drill. His tools are just like impressive. But yeah, the killer itself, just like that, like I didn't see it necessarily earlier. It just seemed like, oh, this is the killer and his gag. I get it. But now, looking at it from, you know, where we are today, you can't really like. It's if nothing else, it's full of puns. Like we're just making jokes here. Like he's got his tool. He's got his giant tool. He's drilling these people, and I don't know. I don't know how we didn't see. This is one of those movies I think that just ages better because it was ahead of its time and it was saying things that a lot of us weren't really privy to, unless, I mean, honestly, unless you're a woman and living in this world and dealing with these like pervy people following you around and like making you like carrying your keys and your fingers and stuff, like living that life. Like as us, like we never knew that. So I don't know. It just wasn't as obvious, I don't think.
No, yeah, I don't think it was as obvious. And I think that goes to Rita Mae Brown's script and probably her background as, I mean, just barely like breezing over her incredible career. I mean, it is pretty fascinating. I mean, she has written everything. I mean, she's a poet, she's a screenwriter, she's a novelist, I believe she's also a teacher. She's written TV, she's written mystery books. I mean, she's done everything you could possibly do in terms of writing. and it's all from the, you know, the female perspective, and in particular her work as you know, I guess she's 76 now, so I mean at the time she would have been 37,
Yeah.
something like that, 37, 36, 37. But just her work in like women's rights and civil rights, it looks like is incredibly long. So it's no accident, I don't think, any of these things happened
No.
and the way they happen, because it is written so tightly. But now we finally get to, and then this must be like 25 minutes in, right? 30 minutes in, that the party is finally fucking happening.
Yeah.
And what a party it is. There's pizza, there's people doing drugs and drinking booze.
And just taking their clothes off during a conversation while boys watch. That's
Yeah,
another scene that made me laugh
boys,
really
yeah,
hard.
two boys are watching them undress. I mean, presumably they're invited, but they're just creepily waiting outside while they change.
Yeah.
And then the neighbor gets killed, which we talked about while he was snail hunting. So all bets are off because he's the only adult around. So now that the driller killer's got that guy, all bets are off. And I'm trying to remember the next thing that happens. There is like a weird conversation of like one of the main girls is like, "Oh, can I go? Is it cool if I go hang out with this boy?"
Yeah. Well, yeah, like
or
she
something
has
like that. Like she kind of asked the group, like, I know it's supposed to be like a girls' night, but like, can I go sneak away with my boy, this guy, for a little bit?
Yeah. And then I mean they
And he's
listen to her
dead.
talk on the well, they talk to
while that's happening, he's killed.
well, they talk on the phone and they all listen in and make fun of her. And I think there's
that's
like
what it
some
is.
stuff in there. Yeah. And she's asking him if she's getting better at sex and all this stuff. It's very it's very like, yeah, strange little sequence. And I think it's kind of playing on that like expectation and insecurity of teenagedom there. But yeah, like then he comes and she has him park in the garage in their car, and it's like the most awkward, strange, like wooden sex scene I think we've ever seen, quite intentionally. Like there's a close up on a nipple just like kind of being moved back and forth by a finger. Like it's just like really inept, weird stuff. And then yeah, the driller killer gets them, obviously.
Yeah, obviously the driller killer has to get them. Well, I guess the pizza guy shows up at some point, which is my favorite kill of the movie, because it's just like they order the pizza, and then when the pizza guy shows up, he's like, he's got his eyes drilled out, somehow perfectly drilled. This drill can do miraculous things when it comes to killing people. He perfectly drills that his eyes out.
The pizza guy. Huh?
Yeah, and it never breaks. So like he's chasing people. He is, decapitating some people. This drill can seemingly do everything you need to do when it comes to killing teens. And I'm trying to remember. After the pizza guy happens, they now know that something's amiss, right? That
right.
They don't really even talk too much about their friend who went to get her book that never shows up. They don't really talk too much about, I guess, the neighbor. Like nothing's amiss until that guy really falls over, right?
And then they seem relatively okay still. Like they're eating pizza over his dead body and stuff.
One of their friends. Like, I mean, one of their friends, and then the other friend does like acknowledge that. Like, how can you be hungry? She's like, oh, I'm hungry. I don't know. Which I actually love that scene. But okay, at this point, we're like well over halfway through this movie, because again, it's 75 minutes. We're probably like 35, 40 minutes or more in at this part before the whole group knows that people are being killed. And then I'm trying to remember, they grab like phone. Weapons, right? They grab like, they try to call. Yeah, you're right. They try to call.
They call their coach to they call their coach. That was what, man, we messed this up. But when the pizza guy comes, they call their coach and they're trying to find out like the score of who hit the runs for this baseball thing. They're talking sports. And then the pizza guy falls in with his no eyes. And then I believe the phone lines get cut and then the power goes off. And then they're left to their own wits to survive after that. And the coach calls I can't remember the one who didn't go to the party, because she's a neighbor of theirs.
Valerie
tells Valerie what's going on.
She like kind of hears a scream but can't decide if it's real, right?
Yeah.
before it gets cut off. And then so the guy falls in, and then they all try to like arm themselves. Like they shut the door, right? They grab like knives and does someone have a bat or something? They grab weapons and are like ready to defend themselves, which is actually awesome. Which there's a poster that has them all like, I gotta find this real quick. That has them like in front of the fireplace with weapons. That's actually fucking awesome. Let me see. I think it's the poster that I saw. Or maybe it's just an image. I don't know. It's a awesome scene where they're like three girls. They're facing like either direction, one in the center. Yeah, it's right here. They all have knives, and they're like one's facing to the left, one's facing center, one's facing to the right. And I fucking love that image. It's just a great image. And then she's like, "How long do I have to hold my arm like this?" And I'm like, incredible. Like I just don't know. Like when lines like that are given, you're just like, this movie actually fucking.
Yeah, I know.
Because we have to remember that these girls have only had a couple potato chips. They've smoked some weed at this point. They've had some beers. One of them had some pizza, and now they're holding knives, fighting for their lives. Yeah. And I think they're drinking like Michelob Ultra because it's one of those like classic bottles, like the amber bottle.
It looks like a Modelo. Like if you picture those bottles.
Now it looks like a Modelo, but I think back then it was like, I think it was like Michelob. Just regular Michelob. It wouldn't be Ultra. There's no Ultra at the time.
Yeah, nobody cared about Ultra back then.
Yeah, no. Yeah. But yeah, I just love that fucking shot. But anyways, they're protecting themselves, and then I'm trying to remember.
It's just one by one. Some of them get killed.
And the guys go out to get help. Is that what happens?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then like the guys get like quickly taking it. He like handles both boys like pretty quickly. One of them gets like
they're worthless,
killed, and the other one gets like cut. And there's like this. He's like the quietest guy who's dying. He's not screaming ever. He's just like just crawling around the ground. And when he tries to get back into the door, they're ready to kill him because it's just like not making. He's not asking for help. He's not saying who he is. He's just like. It's very funny.
They're all worthless. Like. The boys
but that's when he gets in the house, right? Because they go back into their room.
No, in the room, and then he comes in like
he comes through the back window, right?
But that's after Valerie's been in and all that stuff.
Oh
like
yeah,
Valerie checking the house, and they find one of the dead girls in the fridge, and now they know what's up. It made me laugh really hard too because the little sister and Valerie are in the house, and skipping ahead a little bit when the killer comes down. She just tells her sister to run, doesn't make sure she's okay. She's just like run, and then just like takes off another way and hides on her own. And in the basement, like it's classic, I don't know, like physical comedy at its best when she finds this like amazing like saw, like the little that's and runs. she's running up the stairs. She starts it. She's got something to battle this guy. It's one of those like table saw things. And she runs and she runs and she runs, and right when she gets to the door, like it's plugged in, it just like yanks her back down on the stairs.
But then that's the first time that you make the connection of like, wait, that has a power cord, but his thing doesn't. Oh, okay, I see how this world works. But it is an incredible moment. So here's the interesting part about this: the last 10 minutes of this movie. I feel like I've seen the last 10 minutes of this movie a number of times, like that moment in particular. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's just like the middle of the movie. Because it's such a short movie that it feels like not a lot happens. It's just like they have a slumber party, a guy's killing people, and then the finale happens. And because like that's kind of all that happens in the movie. It's kind of an easy movie to like forget unless you're really focusing, watching, listening to the dialogue, which is where like the gym moments are. But up to that part where she finds that saw and runs up the fucking stairs, and then it's in slow motion. She's running.
So dramatic.
Back. It's so fucking great. And then at the same time, did he hear the coach shows up?
Yeah.
Like around that same time. Yeah. Does he gut her then, or before or after she gets pulled back by the power cord?
It was after, but we skipped ahead another really important part that I wanted to talk about because you mentioned it at the beginning. And he like the one girl. He like when he gets in the house, he's standing over her and he says like his only lines of dialogue the whole movie, and he's just like, "You're all so beautiful, like you're making me do this to you, and like you're gonna like this," and all that. Like very like they've lost all satire at this point. They're just saying exactly what the movie's about and like
Mhm.
what women have to deal with. And that's the only lines I think he says in the entire movie. Like he is talking about how it's their fault that he's doing this and how they're going to like it. And like, it's very, like, I was like, holy shit, watching it this time. Cause he basically says in like 1982, like what we know now is victim shaming. I don't think that was a phrase in 82, but this movie basically points to that. And I don't know. I was just, yeah, shocked. I was like, whoa, they did that back in 82. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's. I was trying to remember. I think he has like two other lines, but they're all relative to that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're so pretty. You're making me do this to you. Like, pretty similar.
But yeah, then the coach shows up and she doesn't actually, well, I guess she does get disemboweled a little bit. I don't know. I was thinking gutting sounds a little more like in there, but again, like it's magic tool like slices across her belly and her insides end up being on the outside. And then, but then I think that's kind of when the movie turns, because the girls have kind of been hiding and running to this point, but this is the point where Valerie's downstairs and she found a machete after the saw incident. And she comes upstairs after another girl had found like a kitchen knife and stabs him. Like they're fighting back at this point. And that's kind of a shift in how it all went. And yeah, the Valerie with the machetes fighting him. And then there's this scene like you're talking about how magical his tool is this whole time. They're fighting out by the pool, and this machete was like, this makes no like rational sense. Her machete goes like slices.
It's a machete made of adamantium, so it's the strongest metal in the world. It's the only way it fucking works.
But it slices his tool, like the drill part, in half. So now he's completely neutered.
Oh wait,
which
how
is
could you forget?
amazing.
I was looking at like his other lines dialogue. Jeff is like, "Who is it?" And then like the closed door, it's like pizza delivery, and then they're like, "What's the damage?" And he's like, 6 so far. Because remember, he's like piling the bodies up in the back of his back of the car.
Yeah, he's counting.
Yeah, he counts them, but he like counts. He like says the body count that part, and I in my head I'm like, wait a minute, there's not. I don't think at that point there are actually 6 dead people, but he does say that there are 6 dead people.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there's like 4.
That's more of a mumble though. He doesn't really like enunciate that very well. It's like 1, 2.
He also
like
says
whispering to himself.
Yeah, he says that you're all so pretty. I love you. It takes a lot of love for a person to do this. You know, you want it. You will like it. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think that might be the last of his lines. He might say something else at the end. I'm trying to see here. Okay, but I ruined your reveal, which is
he neuters him, or she neuters him.
She fucking cuts his tool in half.
Yeah.
With the strongest machete anybody's ever seen. And okay, so the pool scene actually that did not exist in the original script and was a reshoot, which is crazy. So the cutting of the tool, I don't think it existed originally.
Yeah, it's perfect. Like I completely forgot about that, and it's pretty amazing. It was amazing to watch. It made me LOL. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's a terrific moment. I mean,
well, and like on top of that, like he falls in the pool. Like she cuts his hand off and all this slices him, and he falls into the pool. And then you have that moment of calm, and then the final scare. He pops up out of there.
Yeah, well, because she like cuts him. She like almost cuts his belly open. She gets a good couple hits, and he's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, and then he comes out to get them, and then the girl with the knife from the kitchen comes out and stabs him, and they're all fighting, and he's punching and doing all this stuff, and he comes at her in this magical machete again. Like he jumps at her, and she holds it out, and it goes through his chest basically. And at that moment, with all the neutering and all this like phallic stuff we've seen before, I was like, holy shit, she just fucked him. like she just penetrated him.
Yeah, like, I mean 100% that's what happened.
Yeah, and I was like, this is amazing. Like talk about role reversal. And then like that horror version of empowerment. I'm like, this is incredible. And that
and then
credits.
Yeah. Well, and then you have the survivors are Valerie, the new girl, and her sister Courtney, and then Trish, who is like kind of the bitch to Valerie at the beginning. So I guess like friends for life, because she's essentially saves her. This new girl in the
sense like her like being mean was like she's too pretty. I mean, like,
yeah,
it's not real mean. So, I'm sure they can get over it. They bonded.
And then the movie's over. It's one of the classic endings of like it's just fucking over after they kills him. They have like a breakdown moment, and then I don't even think you hear the cops coming or anything. It's just like
I think you might hear sirens during the credits. I'm not sure though. I might
it's
have put that there
very
with my head.
very quick. Yeah, and it's right away to the end. There's no like long setup or anything. No lead for a sequel. But this film does have, as I did my research, 2 proper sequels, which is Slumber Party Massacre 2, Slumber Party Massacre 3, and then there. If you didn't know this, Eric, it's okay because I didn't either. There are other films in the quote unquote Massacres film series that are called Sorority House Massacre, Sorority House Massacre 2, Nighty Nightmare, Sorority House Massacre 3, Hard to Die. And then shocking, because this was announced minutes before this podcast, the Sci-Fi Channel is going to be remaking Slumber Party Massacre from the director of the Banana Splits movie and written by one of the writers of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Whoa.
And that'll be shooting later this year. But that's kind of
crazy. Is it going to be on Sci-Fi Channel then, or are they just funding it?
I think it's going to be on there. It says, I like how the film's plot is under wraps, but it's considered a reimagining. It's like, okay, well, yeah. So that's cool. And it's from Shout Factory, or Shout Studios, who owns Shout Factory. So probably we'll get like the TV version, and then we'll get like a proper R-rated version, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that would be a safe assumption, I would say. I haven't seen any of the sequels, and I didn't know that a whole universe existed. So I'm shook right now, I think, as they say. I
know you have some homework to do. Yeah. So what was your so I don't think I'd ever seen it from start to finish. I will say that, but also as a movie, maybe it felt so familiar watching this. What was your feelings post watch? Were you like, oh, this movie's great?
Yeah. Like
it's halfway better through. Than you remember?
Yeah. And but I will say like halfway through, like the lack of, I don't know what you'd call it. I think it's just being in the 80s and not having much of a budget, and the lack of like any like believable plot, I think kind of like was a little heavy for me, like towards the middle of it. But then when it all comes together and you see everything they're doing, and then when you kind of realize how satirical it is and how kind of hilarious it is if you let it be, then I came back around and I'm like, this is actually really great. Like, I think you have to get over the fact that it's a cheap movie from the 80s. So it's dated and it's cheap, and some of the stuff is a little like, what? Like, so you have to kind of put that aside and acknowledge that and really appreciate it for what it is. But yeah, I would recommend this to everyone. It's a great little piece of, like, especially feminist filmmaking history and horror. I think it's one of the first that I can think of. So loved it.
I think it deserves more respect than that I gave it prior to the watch last week. I think this movie's it does put fun first, which is good, I think, and probably was probably something from New World that like they had to make it like hit all the beats of like nudity, blood, and like have this short run time and be more of like this fun teen film. But it does, when it uses dialogue, it doesn't hold back, and I think it's very clever and smart, and all of its dialogue, and of course that finale is just about perfect. I mean, the last 8 minutes of this movie, from when the body in the fridge is found to the end of the movie, it's just a perfect thing. I mean, I will say it's actually pretty close to a perfect film, and it holds up really well in I think in a 2021 lens.
I think better than it probably did at the time.
Probably, yeah, you're probably right. And it'll be interesting to see, because like they did a lot of it probably, they did it in a studio system that was ran by men and of the time, like, was churning out these types of films. Now, when you look to remake it, you're cognitively making it those things where certainly it was written, the writer and the director did, but they were doing it kind of low key, I think. From the studio. The studio certainly wasn't like, we're making a feminist horror film. But today, like, certainly, like, when I look at the remake, I'm certain that the top of the line is it's written and directed, and it is a feminist horror film, a slasher film. I'm sure is how they're selling that, which is fine. But this did it like, 1981 in much more difficult circumstances, and it might be more successful because it had to do it kind of under the radar.
Yeah, I just think it has Yeah, like it's just impressive because so many movies from my childhood that were problematic that I'm like, oh, I love that movie, and I haven't seen it in 20 years, and I watch it now, and I'm like, oh, like this is troublesome. There's a lot of like troublesome things in this. This is like the opposite of that. I like at the time I watched it and I was like, it's fine. It's just another knockoff. It's silly. But now you go back and you're like, this is so much more than I remember it being. And I have to say that's a better feeling than going back and being like, oh no, this is not as good as I remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was a great watch. I think I will. I'll probably give it I'll probably give the sequels a go.
Yeah, why not? Did you look up any research? I didn't even look up. Like, do
I
the same people do it or?
I don't think that's well. Are you okay? Shocking or not shocking, Eric? Here, the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie is 39%.
The original?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
That is
then the
kind of
audience
shocking,
score,
maybe.
this audience score is only 43%.
Huh. That is kind of shocking to me.
It made $3.6 million on a $220,000 budget, which I say that's pretty good.
If you get 3 sequels or 2 sequels, then and a whole universe after that, you probably did something right, like money wise.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I'm curious, is the same killer? And he couldn't be, right?
I
Oh,
really
so
hope not.
Valerie and Courtney are in number 2 at least.
All right.
And oh my gosh, the killer in number 2 is literally, it's a different actor, but their name is billed as the Driller Killer.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And he's got like, if I'm looking at the photo right, his driller is like, it's like a guitar.
Yeah, I'm gonna check out that. They couldn't be worse, right? He doesn't say anything.
It could be.
So they are
but
all 3 of those are directed by women, and I think written by women too. I'm gonna check them all out.
Yeah,
This is a series
I'm with
written and
you.
directed by women. That's in the 80s. That's pretty. The tagline
Yeah.
for the second one is, well, the second one is the party begins when the lights go out, but the third one is it's driller time, and this bit's for you.
Oh God.
I'm gonna check it out.
A teen and her friends are terrorized by a rock star whose guitar is fitted with a drill bit. That's where we're at.
The second one,
Okay.
I'm okay. Yeah, we're gonna follow back up maybe sometime in the future with these other 2 films, which also have very similar Rotten Tomato scores. I mean, by all accounts, I think I'm gonna love these movies. I don't know, maybe not, but the rock and roll guitar as a drill is pretty insane looking, and it looks like Prince would play this guitar, but at the end of it is. So I guess this. I don't know what the themes in this one is, but it's probably about shitty rock guys treating women shittily with their mega tool, right? Using rock to get the ladies.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know
I
how to
mean,
watch it.
fuck, I have to watch this movie. I'm just going through these photos, and it just looks absolutely top line stuff. So
Part 3 didn't come out until 1990.
I know, and you could tell it looks super 90s, and he's using it looks like the killer is Chris Pine, so I don't know. I am thrilled to check out the rest of the series. I don't know about the sorority massacre ones, but if these next 2 go over pretty well, I'll probably venture into those as well. Well, cool. This was great. This was a fun little. I think we're gonna loosely do like some kind of series here, right? Like some kind of spring fever. Like this movie is super horny, and that's kind of why we wanted to do it, and then it kind of fit right in line. So maybe next time will be a non-slasher movie about springtime coming for us. We've talked about. I think we know what we're gonna do. Maybe a movie that I don't think I like, but I do want to talk about the themes of.
Okay. I don't know which one we're talking about now, but I'm into it.
I think it would be the first shitty, quote unquote, trashy movie or shitty movie we've actually covered.
Oh, fantastic. When you say it that way.
I know. Who could resist that episode? What a tease. Cool. Well, if you like this show, you know what to do here. It's like, review, tell your friends. You can get a hold of us on the Nightmare Hour Pod on all the social medias. If you want to get a hold of us directly, it's nightmarehourpod@gmail.com. And that's it. That's all we got. The hour may be over, but the nightmare keeps ticking, Eric. That was the Nightmare Hour podcast. Thank you all for listening. And remember, just because you got a drill doesn't mean you got to use it.
I don't know what to do with that. But okay.
I felt like that was a good way to sign off. It felt like a good.
Just like, okay. Like,
Are you still connecting
yeah, I'm
the
just like,
dots?
I'm still processing.
It's a tool thing.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. You don't have to
trying
just start drilling shit just because you got the tool.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. If I give you a hammer and a box of nails, don't go hammering shit just to hammer shit. Does that work better?
No, it's not getting better. It's getting worse.
Okay. All right. That's it.
All right. Bye.
Hangs up the phone at the end.